is Marsya. Petrina and I collectively have decades of experience working with and at major cultural institutions. I'm an independent curator and arts administrator. I'm a PhD student at York, as mentioned. I'm in my first year. My research explores practices of collective care and radical friendship as grounds for institutional structure, work culture, and labor practices in the arts.
Hello, I'm Petrina. I'm an artist, community organizer, and arts administrator. And my practice considers how art can disrupt and interrupt colonial legacies, which are subtle or invisible, but embedded within our socio-political and cultural systems. And I also look at how art can offer alternatives that are intimate, collaborative, and community-led. Marsya and I are both informed by our roles and responsibilities as racialized settlers and uninvited guests working and learning on Turtle Island.
We'll start our presentation with a quick list to illustrate common conditions of labor in the arts based on our own experiences and what we've learned anecdotally from our peers. A lot of them really echo, maybe we're not mentioning it, but a lot of them echo what's been discussed here. It's important to note that these toxic and precarious conditions are, of course, exacerbated for equity-seeking art workers and are often compounded with racialized, misogynist, ableist, classist, ageist microaggressions and outright violences. I'll start with the first five. One, contract positions only. One time an HR rep said to me on the last day of a temporary contract that had been renewed over and over again, "Sorry, your job has not been approved for a full-time position, but good news, we found a loophole that allows us to renew your contract temporarily, just again." Two, minimum wage positions require several post-secondary degrees. Three, equivalent positions in other industries have higher salaries. Four, usually no health benefits, pension, performance reviews. Five, raises are unnecessary since your contract expires soon anyway.
Six, being paid for a 30-hour work week for a 50-hour work week job. Seven, lieu time instead of overtime pay. Eight, no time to take accumulated lieu time because of unrealistic workload and understaffed team. 9, if you leave your contract with weeks of untaken lieu time, everyone is surprised and claims that they just saw this for the first time. 10, staffs are so small, there's no one to cover your responsibilities if you're sick or out of office, but the show must go on.
11, you're always the only POC on staff, the only. 12, if you're working on an offsite project, you will actually be the only staff of any position. 13, offices are all open concept and public facing, so there's no privacy to take breaks or eat food. 14, there is an established national standard for minimum wage for independent artists. The recommended minimum fee for a workshop or presentation is $316. This is based on years of developing a practice, plus the hours to prepare for each specific workshop or presentation. 15, getting paid in exposure bucks.
16, getting a raise in title instead of a raise in pay. 17, not having a title or job description, so your responsibilities are never clear and your job never understood. 18, you are expected to attend events in the evenings, weekends, or on your days off, purely as social engagements, but really it's what other industries would call professional development. 19, therefore you will not get promoted or be offered new opportunities unless you attend these social engagements. 20, no transparency of salaries. We never know exactly what our colleagues are paid. The only thing we know for sure is that we are all underpaid.
21, no funding for staffing, but good news, we can double our production budget to make much bigger exhibitions, festivals, and conferences. 22, your job is to monitor, program, or manage your gallery, but you will also clean toilets, wash dishes, move furniture, oversee pest control, etc., without additional pay. 23, huge wage gap, even though there's only like 5 staff members. 24, every single supervisor or director we've worked for has been white. 25, meanwhile, you will organize exhibitions and conferences about decolonization, inclusion, care, labor issues, or present at them with minimal, if at all, pay. Yeah, These are the more easily explainable things we can communicate in under 3 minutes, but there are a lot of also testimonies that have come up lately in response to the performativity of museums' BLM solidarity statements. Called out institutions include the Banff Art Center, Gardner Museum, AGO, Art Gallery Mississauga, etc.
So just to offer a very quick introduction about Gendai. Gendai is a collectively run nomadic nonprofit arts organization, originally founded in 2000 and focused on experimental curatorial and organizational practices with a mandate to support artists of color. In 2019, Gendai's members sought to retire, and true to their experimental approach to organizational practices, they launched an open call to facilitate an organizational takeover. Marsya and I proposed to pivot the Gendai platform to invest in the future of BIPOC arts workers with experimental professional development programs and in response to labor conditions cited above.
We have 2 programs that are public right now. We're just focusing on one of our programs today called Gendai Co-op. Jump ahead. You can follow along at this link if you want. We're starting from...
I'll pop it in the chat.
Thank you. We're starting from page 5, and we'll be reading a shortened version of it today. While we read, please keep in mind some of our questions for you. We welcome any feedback. We're super thrilled to be here with folks who carry a breadth of knowledge in labor issues and theory. So please give us some feedback. Okay. We'll start with an overview on page 5. Gendai Co-op co-ops existing practices of a touring curatorial project, a research residency, an institutional audit, and a cultural consultancy process, as well as a cooperative model and a student co-op program.
As we know, the roles of most museum professionals derive from colonial roots of museology and are thereby centered around the acquisition and safekeeping of objects. These priorities persist and are often achieved at the cost of the well-being of artists, coordinators, technicians, assistants, volunteers, and other support staff. Our program, Gendai Co-op, asks, if institutions are committed to decolonizing, shouldn't we pivot away from approaches that value the consumption and display of objects over the care of peoples? The physical, intellectual, and emotional labor, particularly from marginalized groups, is exploited throughout the global economy, and arts institutions replicate these same dynamics. Racialized artists, their bodies, and their work are instrumentalized for optics and performative allyship. By reframing Gendai's original mandate to support artists of colors, we are reimagining curatorial practice as a form of care for our peers, our collaborators, and our communities.
A little bit about our project details. Gendai Co-op takes many forms. It is a touring curatorial project. The host institutions will become a part of our inaugural cohort of institutions who are ready to take concrete steps towards more equitable practices. They will also contribute a small percentage of their annual operating budget towards a collective fund that will support the cost of the entire cohort. Co-op is also research residency focusing on introspective activities, such as meetings with staff and board to gain an overview of the operational structure, division of labor, and lived experience of those working for or with the institution, organizing social and visioning activities to build trust and allyship between BIPOC staff, analyzing institutional policies, programs, and assets, as well as BIPOC mentorships for interns and entry-level staff. Gendai Co-op is an institutional audit also and a cultural consultancy program, encouraging institutions to determine their own goals to improve racial equity based on compiled recommendations. We will address areas such as hiring or board appointment practices, onboarding training, artist and employee contracts, paid mentorship and internship opportunities, diverse community representation in governance, reporting and accountability dynamics, policy and bylaw analysis and development, etc.
And for institutions who are participating in our inaugural cohort, which will launch in fall 2021, I'm just going to read the top 3 deliverables that Gendai will offer. 1, a Gendai Co-op Certificate of Cooperation, contingent on the host institution's commitment to continuing to work together. This certification requires renewal and will expire without institutional progress. 2, Gendai and the host institution will agree upon a list of equity-focused goals and a timeline for achieving these goals. And 3, a publicly accessible summary of research activities, findings, and recommendations for the entire institutional cohort. Our intention is not to shame any individuals or singular institutions, but rather to shift our thinking into understanding these equity issues as a collective and sector-wide problem.
And if you notice, Gendai Co-op has an asterisk at the top. It refers to our very important small print, which is our terms and conditions. Gendai Co-op co-ops a variety of professional services that are generally retained by cultural institutions. These include financial audits, cultural planning, consultations, diversity and inclusion training, etc. But we offer these services for the low price of curatorial and artistic labor, as well as at the experimental competency level of such professions. While widely innovative, ambitious, and potentially utopic, please take note of Gendai Co-op's surface limitations. Gendai Co-op is not a professional diversity and inclusion training program for your staff. Gendai Co-op is not counseling for your BIPOC operatives. Gendai Co-op co-operators, Petrina and I, are not certified conflict mediation professionals. However, Gendai Co-op co-operators are excited to cooperate with you as co-researchers and co-learners, experimenting with alternative forms of operations, and will work together to connect you with appropriate professional help and resources. Gendai Co-op terms and conditions may apply.
So in closing, we thought that we would mention that we, as a non-hierarchical collective organization, we have an ongoing call for collaborators. And we thought that we would list some of the ideas that we're thinking of right now. And our 2 projects, Co-op, which you just heard about, and MA MBA, they both work together to conceptualize a roadmap for some of our bigger dreams. So these include universal basic income for artists, arts workers, labor union for artists and arts workers, sector transparency, salary disclosure, artist fees, contracts, etc. Experimenting with structures of funding, alternatives to institutions, professionalism, alternative approaches to human resources management, job sharing models, alternative labor structures, and collective and decolonial practices.